Welcome back to another week of Every Day We're Covering. CP and SJ with you here to talk the wild world of wagering and sports, and another great week of college football to recap here for you. SJ, maybe not a banner week as far as the picks are concerned, but still some entertaining football.
Yeah, wide and might throw wacky in there as another adjective, as to be expected. But yeah, we mean he's gonna have those weeks, and even kind of heading into it, I was like, not kind of sure how things are gonna play out here, with being like, I guess, below average type of like on paper matchups. That's when it gets real tricky and kind
Mm-hmm.
of either you show your if you want to call it luck, intelligence, research, whatever you want to label it as, kind of where it comes through in weeks like that, because those were some ugly matchups as you looked at them on paper, and a lot of them played out to be ugly games when we watched them over the weekend here.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of lines that were tough to kind of like see where you wanted to go with it because maybe it was just a little bit too big you thought, but and yeah, a lot of games turned ugly on that front. So we'll recap all those picks obviously here from this past weekend for you. We'll give you a chance as well to talk a little bit about. I know there was a big fight weekend there with the UFC card this past weekend, so we'll touch on that. And of course, we'll look ahead to some of the big games that we've got coming up here this next week for college football as well. We may even touch on just a little bit what's going on in the NFL. So definitely getting much busier this time of year. So there's no lack of things for us to chat about. As we get started, we're always, of course, pouring something down. And I guess maybe I'm drowning a little bit in my betting sorrows here this past weekend. You got to admit when you're on the wrong side of the coin. And I sure was this weekend. I know you kind of evened out a little bit, especially with the fights helping you out there at the end of the day. But that's the way it goes. So, but this one's a special one. Maybe this will get me back on the right track here. Maybe this is some good luck charm. I'm rocking with the Canuckies up north. This was actually backpacked out, so I got to give a shout out to the coworkers. There was a gal that I work with that backpacked it out because another guy was asking for it, and then he left me one to have. But it's the old Moosehead Canadian Lager. Straight out of Banff. I'm drinking that. It's not too bad. That Canadian moonshine get you going. What did
Yeah,
you?
it sounds like a nice thing here for the, I guess, kind of a end of the weekend here, Cap, and maybe if you're not only drowning your betting sorrows, but maybe you're have to return to work sorrows.
Yeah, exactly.
Those hit about this time, maybe even a couple hours ago, has been kind of going through the mind at least.
Yeah.
Myself, I don't think I've this. I mean, I guess this is either good or bad, or I can't keep track if I've tried this before. Look at whichever side you want to be on, but I got it's a white sangria sour ale. I don't believe I've tried this. If I have, I just don't remember it. I was like, I just like said last week, it's either if it's a nitro anything or a sour anything, I'm probably gonna grab it. And I was a little bit of a rush, so sour sounds good. So I got me one of those Boulevard, of course, here locally. Brews this one, so figured why not just grab me something simple, easy, and I kind of knew I'd be like, it'll be fine. Just any sour is good with me. So it's
Yeah.
kind of one of those moments where I was like, just give me something I know is gonna go down good, and wasn't too picky at that time.
Yeah. Sometimes you just kind of got to go with the flow a little bit. Not. It can be easy to stand in front of that case for an awfully long time. I know I've done that a few times where it's like,
And then
just
after,
make it.
they ask you two or three times, you need any help? I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna get this and go. 'Cause I'm like, no, I'm just trying to decide. Like, does that sound good? Does this sound good? And
Yeah.
like, I don't think it looks all that suspicious. But
Yeah.
maybe to them, I guess am I going to grab a couple cases, run out the door? Like,
Yeah.
seems like it might be a little difficult
Yeah.
to, lug about 20 pounds worth of booze with you,
Yeah.
but whatever. But yeah, no, I thought maybe that's just a me thing. Sometimes you got, what do you got? 20
Mhm.
square feet maybe of like, real estate there, and you're just doing laps. I'm like, I
Mhm.
just can't decide, bro. Like, it's nothing
Yeah.
personal. I don't know what sounds good.
Yeah. There's lots of choices. Sometimes it's hard to
Well,
pinpoint it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing too. You might want to, it's hard to narrow it down. There's two or three things you want to grab, and
Yeah.
gotta be a little bit chill. It can't just be getting everything put your paws on.
Yeah, you got to reel in the budget sometimes when
Yeah.
it comes to that too. I know I do that, especially, of course, like when we go out of town to somewhere else. Obviously,
Yeah.
I live in a small town, so sometimes the selection is a little bit more limited. You go somewhere else, you're like, oh man, I got some choices I don't see very
Yeah.
often. So yeah, it takes a little longer to do that, and I did do that this past weekend. So I have a couple others in the fridge that I'll whip out here in the coming weeks, but. yeah, always fun, and hopefully you got something good. Well, maybe you're celebrating your weekend. Maybe you did good on your picks, unlike us. That's the hope. We all have our moments, and of course, I know a lot of folks around here are at least celebrating some victories for their football team, so that's good as well. But we'll go into the recap here for you. The day actually kind of started pretty good, really. The way it was ramping up, I'm like, okay, this could be all right. Things were going well early in the day. We had the Bama Wisconsin game, and as we kind of expected, Alabama ran away with the game. It took them a little bit to get going. Of course, Van Dyke gets hurt for Wisconsin at quarterback as well. Doesn't help their cause. And then they absolutely ran out of steam, and Bama rolled. 42-10 was the final, and we were looking for Bama to cover 15.5 there and easily do that. That was a pretty nice victory for them, but I guess I can't say that I'm surprised with the final result.
Yeah, the honest, it was a little closer for longer than I thought, which was really only like a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
But so it took a little while to get going. And at one point it did look like maybe Wisconsin in the second half there could have made a game out of it. I didn't expect them to, but I was like, oh, if they get something here, it might be cooking. I'll watch a little bit closer for that number, but it was never in doubt and just played out like we thought. And that's always nice, especially early in the day, and kind of get the momentum going and hopefully carry it through the day. It's always nice to start with a win there at the beginning of the slate.
Yeah. Here's another one, and this is a cautionary tale to you because I made this mistake, and I'm probably not going to do it again. Oklahoma State, I had 18.5 against Tulsa, and they absolutely rolled. They came out guns a-blazing. They ended up, I think Bowman ended up throwing 5 touchdown passes in the game. 45-10 was the final score. They rolled to the win. But as I was making that wager, I thought, well, I needed something to juice this just a little bit, give me the plus side of the money, because I felt good about them winning. And whenever Oklahoma State wins in recent memory, Ollie Gordon usually gets into the end zone. So I'm like, I'll throw in Ollie Gordon anytime touchdown score. That'll help get it plus. Yeah, and it was like plus, 125 or whatever. Got me the right side. And of course, they throw the ball all friggin' day long. And he never scores. I'm like, how did they score 45 points and he doesn't friggin' score? Like a Heisman Trophy candidate at the beginning of the season. Just like, that's the stuff that just gets you sometimes.
Yeah, that's when you just guys kind of throw your arms up and be like, what can you do about it? Because you figure a team like that with, by far in a way, their most notable, if not best player, however you want to categorize it, if they're scoring near, almost 50 points,
Yeah.
how is he not going to get a touchdown? So
Yeah.
that's not even one that, I mean, it's annoying and it'll piss you off, and I get that, but it also is like you can't really be like, oh, this was a dumb move, I should have never did this.
Yeah.
Like that was pretty much like they were giving you money, at least it seemed like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I felt good about it early, but just did not pan out. But we won the game. The Okie State, if you went with that pick, we were right on that front. Oregon State couldn't quite hang with Oregon. They did for a while, but then it got out of hand. 49-14 the final. Oregon State was getting 16.5. I hate to see that, actually. I wanted those teams to keep, especially Washington State and Oregon State. Washington State got the job done. They won.
Right.
But yeah, you kind of wanted to see that just to stick it to them a little bit.
Yeah, and then I mean, on the good side of things, I'm trying to be positive here, I suppose, but maybe I just at least they didn't mess around and let us know right away. Okay, this isn't worth watching anymore. Like they, look by halftime there at least. I mean, I think they were still maybe barely within the spread there, like late in the second quarter, early third, but a couple big plays by Oregon. I was like, okay, and then there was no answer. I was like, okay, no need to watch this. Let's at least they'll let me get on with my day. I'll look at the positive side of things, and I was surprised though, just the way Oregon had played. I thought it'd be a little bit more of a, but maybe they found something. But I think there is at least one special team score and maybe like a turnover, at least set up a quick score or led to it. So, I mean, they still got, obviously they want to improve and get better. That's not the summit of the season there, but a big win for Oregon, probably a good feeling after those first 2 weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, got them a little bit more on track as they expect. A&M had them laying 3.5 at Florida, and they rolled 33-20 was the final. They were up by a good chunk most of that game, so that was a pretty decent one to hit there. Obviously, Florida's just in a world of hurt. They may have a different coach by the end of the season.
Yeah, and then just I mean, you think about where them and Florida State were like not
Oh
long
yeah.
ago. It's kind of seemed like you're on the on the upward swing there, but that's just how fast it can change. And sometimes it's we've I don't want to we don't need to dig too deep in this discussion, but just with the transfer thing, the way it is, it's sometimes you build a program and then sometimes you just kind of hit lightning in a bottle and then it falls apart as fast as it came together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've seen that for sure. It does go both ways. Another a couple here. Tulane, Oklahoma, looking for the over there. It got there. 53 was the final total. Oklahoma wins at 34-19. We were over 47.5 on that one. So nice pick by you there. We went opposite ways on the Mizzou BC game, and you got the better of it. BC did play tough. Mizzou came back, got the lead by halftime, so I kind of thought maybe they're going to pull away with this thing, but BC kept hanging around. It ends up being a 6-point game, 27-21, so BC covers. Really about the only positive thing I'm going to say about an ACC school. I've got a little rant for that later, but yeah, they did nice hanging in there in that one.
No more good vibes with NC State, huh? Those days are long gone.
Long
But
gone.
as far as as far as that Missouri and BC, I was right there. I was like a little bit getting a little bit nervous there about the halftime because they kind of scored what 10 or 17 points there within like a 2 or 3 minute span of
Mm-hmm.
game time. And I was like, oh crap, the floodgates might open here. But BC hung tough, and I mean, I've never been like a fan of his, or even thought that highly of him. But you do kind of have to start giving Bill O'Brien some credit. I know
Mm-hmm.
they lost, but just kind of the turnarounds he's done and just getting teams playing and having good game plans always. As far as the coaching part of it goes, I mean, his personality leaves a lot to be desired. But as far as the X's and O's, which is I mean that is like his main job, what he's paid for.
Mm-hmm.
He's proven that he knows what he's doing when it comes to that.
Yeah, he's definitely done that a lot, and it's usually been the longevity issue that works out. I mean, he just doesn't kind of keep that momentum going eventually, and that's why he's ended up leaving where he's been. But we'll
Right.
see.
When with the personality like that, I can see where that when it starts going bad, it's easy to be like, all right, buddy, let's pack your bags or what have
Yeah,
you.
yeah, get that sour face out of here. Utah let me down. They won 38-21. Not quite enough. Needed 18 and a half to cover. Only 17. So
Oof.
unfortunately, they
Yeah.
started slow. Of course, Cam Rising didn't play, so
Mhm.
that's a big deal. But yeah, it was a rough game. It was not pretty. I don't know. It's going to be interesting what they do moving forward here. I'm going to skip over one game because I know we're going to talk about it a lot here, but we'll move down to Auburn. They were looking to cover 28 against New Mexico. Did not quite do it. 45-19 was the final there, so we were just a hair off on that one. And then the Texas game, I mentioned to kind of take a flyer on that one. Well, that would have worked out. 56-7, the final. They beat UTSA. They needed to cover 35.5, and they did it. Another one that kind of got me frustrated just because it was looking pretty decent towards the end, and I thought the defenses were finally going to get some good stops, but the scoring just kept on a coming between West Virginia and Pitt. Not like I said, not what I expect in that game, but boy, they got to 72 total. 38-34 was the final. Pitt wins it in a wild back and forth. I think there was 3 scores within the last like 6 minutes of the game. And they were looking for under 63.5, which I thought was a steal, but apparently the bookies knew better than I did. So
Yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah, someone either in Pittsburgh, greater Pittsburgh area, or in the coal mines of West Virginia must have a listener of the show. Just give us a little bit of bulletin board material because that was exactly the opposite of how you'd think that game would play out, and of course, that's the way it goes, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
that was. I don't even know if it was even that. I mean, what I saw of it, it was okay. It didn't even seem to me like it was like, oh, this game's amazing type of thing for being that high scoring. But it was.
Yeah.
I mean, they whatever we cared about that total there, they easily or they took care of that. So I guess that's all that matters in that as far as the win or loss. We weren't really too concerned about that.
Yeah. 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 I think it was one of those games where it was entertaining because it was close, not
Right.
necessarily because there was, yeah, a bunch of spectacular plays. Seemed like quite a few mistakes along the way, but I guess in those games, sometimes you expect it to be a little wacky, anyways, in those rivalry type deals. But the other one that really I did not see this coming at all because I thought this was kind of like lock of the week type of thing. Vanderbilt, beats Virginia Tech, and then they lose. Not only did they not cover the 10.5, but they lose outright to Georgia State, 36-32. I was watching it early, and the way it started, I'm like, oh, this is
You
going
could just
south.
tell you had the had that like vibe of being like they're not ready to play, or they're
Yeah.
just yeah.
I don't know what the hell was going on, but it was ugly. And yeah, it was one of those deals where like I had it up because I was interested because of course I placed a wager on it, and then I'd be like, I can't watch this. I turn it off for a while, and then I go back and check again. And I mean, finally they got to be where there was some competitiveness to it because it looked like for a while Georgia State was just going to stomp them. But yeah, ugly, ugly, ugly game. So that was not a good one at the to kind of wrap
Well,
up
then
my
you
day.
like they're playing at Georgia State. Well, maybe
Yeah.
this is why. I mean, maybe they should have been. Obviously, I
Hmm.
mean, probably the only team worse kind of. This wasn't one of the plays we made, but that made Vanderbilt maybe not look as bad was the freaking whooping that Mississippi State took by Toledo,
Hmm.
41-17 at home, no less. So it's like, I mean, that's if not for that, it'd probably be. I mean, there's enough. I mean, it's Vanderbilt, so there's probably not ever going to be a lot of talk about it. But
Yeah.
still, like at least that saved them like a little bit of the shame.
Yeah.
Probably more
Spotlight.
going towards Mississippi State just because of that that big number, and then at home too.
Yeah, yeah, they're looking rough, and Toledo actually another solid team. Mac might be interesting this year. They got a couple good squads.
It's Tuesday nights. We're ready.
Yeah,
Let's
we're ready
go.
for action, baby. Yeah. So then, of course, the other one that I did skip over that we'll get to, we had two different plays on it, and they both went sour. Georgia beats Kentucky by a point. 13-12 is the final. We were looking for the over, 45.5, which I said in the show that I thought Georgia might score that themselves. Wrong.
Yeah.
And of course, covering 24 as they were favored because, last week, I mean, from an obvious, just like, a logical perspective, Kentucky took it absolutely on the chin the week before against South Carolina, and then they come out and they look like oh, we can play with anybody, we can hang with anybody, and yeah, I mean Georgia was just flat all game long. You kind of were waiting for that moment where they're gonna make this play that's gonna turn it around. It just never happened, and obviously the crowd got into it for Kentucky. That's awesome when a home team does that. And we were talking beforehand. We started recording that once it starts to go south for your bet, you're almost on the other side of it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys call it whatever, petty, whatever you want, word term you want to use, but definitely, yeah. When you realize there's no chance of them covering, because that was probably maybe midway through even maybe earlier in the third quarter. Once it's got, especially to cover a spread like that, you kind of got to be clicking at least at some point, put up
Mm-hmm.
a 20 spot in at least a quarter. I mean, what was the spread? 24.
Yeah.
They barely scored 25 combined. So we obviously knew that wasn't hitting. So yeah, once I guess I'll call it more rooting against Georgia than rooting for Kentucky, because I'm not gonna really
Mm-hmm.
cheer for them. But yeah, that was me. I'm just like, we might as well see the big dog go down if we're not gonna cash this bet. So
Yeah.
let's go. And unfortunately, it didn't happen, but gives you it does make you think that at some point this season that this they're probably going to be going down. Having a lapse like that isn't just. It's not usually just a 1 week occurrence when it comes to a long season being this early. Now, if this would happen in week 13 or something, it might be a little different. But that early in the year, there's going to be some type of a scheme that someone's going to draw up, something they saw in film. Maybe even be an injury coming here down the pipe here that could mess them up. So we'll keep an eye on that. But there's definitely some numbers I want to look at. Remember these games because, like we were saying before, I think some of these, at least within conference, some of these SEC numbers have been a little on the low side. So
Mm-hmm.
might want to keep an eye on that on those totals going forward. That's kind of the most thing that stuck in my brain, at least for how we're looking at it for this show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is a good point. The one thing that I came away from that game too. Obviously, I was upset just because of the wager side of it, and I did have a little nice little three-teamer going with them capping off the night for me. So of course that added insult to injury. But uh, the what I walked away from it though is, what's great about a game like that and the way that it played out is it kind of reinforces to all of us that this NIL world, this whole new landscape of how college football is, it ain't changing a damn thing about how it's going to be chaotic week to week like college football always is. Like, yeah, some of these teams may have gotten a few more talented players here and there, and obviously there's some swapping of players that kind of goes on as well. But at the end of the day, I think there's still enough talent out there in every place where some kids go want to go somewhere to play, and they can rise up on any Saturday and make something happen. And that's just kind of that one of those games I think that proved it to me that yeah that we're a little ways away from these teams at the top still absolutely dominating everything.
And my thought always was, as far as being like in support of NIL was, well, first off, of course, people that are generating the revenue should be getting paid the revenue, so that goes without saying. But as far as affecting the game, I always looked at it as a positive, as being like this probably could will happen more often in
Mm-hmm.
my mind because yeah, I mean, the bigger schools, of course, have the more deeper pockets, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
but there's only so many spots to go around still, no matter how much. And with another team maybe not having everything covered like the other school does as far as like facilities and tradition and coaching, that type of thing. Well, now they can kind of sweeten the deal there and grease a few palms legally now and get somebody to make, hey, you're gonna make this money and you're gonna probably get on the field more often and maybe
Mm-hmm.
even be a starter
Mm-hmm.
and get a chance to go up against these guys who they don't think you're as good as. So I think it kind of does maybe play it if you're going to recruit to that angle. I think it could help some of the schools that I'm not talking about, like a Vanderbilt we mentioned, or
Yeah.
somebody way down. That I'm thinking of somebody more like just on that next tier. It
Mm-hmm.
might actually give them a boost and help being level the playing field a little bit more. There's always going to be the no matter if it's college football, even in professional leagues, there's always going to be like that top tier. But
Mm-hmm.
I think for college is one of the best things you can do to kind of help out, and like a little bit more parity, just have better games. And I don't know, I think upsets are good. It kind of got to the point where it's like when you lose, you're done. I get that's how it was forever, but I always thought that was kind of a little bit nonsense. What kind of sport where you lose
Yeah.
once and you're basically not the best anymore? I mean, of course, when you go undefeated, you're obviously unquestionably the best, but I don't think one loss should tarnish a whole season or make it think like, they're not worthy now. They lost one game.
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes to show how different each week is. I mean, every matchup is different, every game is different, and I think you're right. I mean, and we've talked about that too. How there is that opportunity for some teams. Yeah, maybe they're not going to be able to spend for a lot of positions, but they're going to get a few, and it's going to make them better because they're going to go out and get that one key piece or whatever from another school that couldn't play there. So yeah, maybe that does balance itself out a little bit more as you move down the line with all this stuff changing. But it also keeps it into a little bit of perspective as well about the competition itself hasn't changed. These games are still it's still the same rules, same players going out there and trying to win, and anything can happen. And I guess it makes I think that narrative is just being driven. A lot of people immediately think money bad, gonna ruin the sport.
All right.
These teams are gonna buy everybody, and then we're all screwed. And that's not happening. I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting, obviously, as we get further into it. I mean, we're just at the precipice, all this stuff. But yeah, it was a nice little reminder, and yeah, certainly was rooting for Kentucky to pull it off there, but did not quite do it. So interesting, yeah, and just what a letdown for Georgia. I mean, the team that you normally kind of put the hammer on, and you like to put the hammer on just because of your regional closeness and all that, and not this time around. It was a much different affair. So to me, that also what is interesting, I guess, is this thing is more wide open than anybody even thought. I think at the end of the beginning of this season, we all kind of thought, hey, Georgia, Ohio State, those kind of teams were going to be, well, they probably going to run the show. But I don't know. This is a little bit more up for grabs than we maybe even thought at the begin with.
Yeah, I mentioned being on going undefeated. I'll be awfully surprised if anybody does that this year, and especially with the way it's set up, and being a little different with the playoff and in the conferences. Not only the number of teams, but the competition level within conference has gone up because most of the that have added conferences have added, if you on paper or however you want to term it, better teams. So if you have anything, you would think it's going to be a lot harder going undefeated, more games, better teams. So the recipe for an undefeated season is probably like dang near non-existent unless you get one of those just magical teams or years where you're just that kind of unstoppable, one of those like teams that kind of setting records all across the board. Other than that, it's probably going to be very difficult to to have an undefeated season anymore, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it makes it much more interesting for us as fans. That's the definite benefit of that part of it. I do want to say that I'm also very unimpressed with the ACC conference going forward. I hope I don't. I hope I don't let it influence myself to the point where I'm going to make a mistake because of it. But man, this is
Let
like,
those emotions get the best of you
yeah,
now.
yeah. But what the hell is going on? Like, I mean, aside from giving BC credit, which we already did,
Hmm.
I mean, everybody else. What have we? I mean, Miami. Yeah, they played well so
Yeah.
far, and they might be the team that just absolutely runs away with this thing because, everybody was talking up Virginia Tech. Well, they lose to Vandy, and then they could turn around and lose to the Sun Belt. So like, no, they're not. They ain't it. Florida State, what an absolute train wreck! Like they just aren't good. They're just flat not good. Like we were all fooled. Like I think we were just living off of you had one good season with a bunch of guys, at least a few guys sprinkled in there that were pros that propped you up for a year. And I think we all kind of lost sight of the fact that for what a decade before that they absolutely stunk. And I think it was just a blip in the radar. They stink again. Like they're just not good. So that's a rough situation there. And yeah, and the other teams, Georgia Tech's looked okay. But you're looking at the matchups on paper that have happened so far, and it's just like, wow, this is not great. I don't know. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that moving forward. If there are some other matchups here where you get a chance to have a cross divisional. I mean, this next week might be about it. Before we start getting full and heavy into the whole conference slate. But man, there may be some where it's like that one team, like Miami, for example, might be watching them pretty close. We'll see what those lines are because I think they might be kicking some ass the way it looks.
Yeah, this would be basically kind of perfect for college football as a whole, just the sport. But something like Cal, so they're 3-0, right, in the
Yeah,
ACC.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
they might end up making a run here and being in a wacky season.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like wasn't even thinking about it the other day, and I was like, crap, they are in the AC. Just
Yeah.
like that. The Atlantic Coast Conference. Let's put Cal in there. All right,
Mm-hmm.
let's. But I mean, they actually look pretty good, especially they got a win over Auburn, and
Mm-hmm.
you're undefeated, so you're undefeated. And I think a game to watch here going forward that would be, maybe more of like a little bit of a barometer kind of. Then we can really just bury them because I'm with you as far as like a little bit. I won't be picking them to win many games, other than maybe a Miami, depending who they go up against. But not so on the 28th to be like 2 weeks, I guess, was that week 5 or something.
Yeah.
Uh, Louisville is at Notre Dame. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I know Notre Dame took a L already, but they look like they rebounded in a big way,
Yeah, they did.
just straight ass kicking against Purdue there. So that might be a game to kind of judge it here. And I mean, I guess Notre Dame's kind of like a non not what do I call it? Like a de facto member of the ACC, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much in every sport except
Yeah.
football. So I mean, but that'll be like a kind of a good, I guess maybe a showcase game where you could watch and see if see if maybe there's something to go off there with a Louisville squad, who's I mean had some decent years, but yeah, there's not a lot besides without like I said without the addition of Cal, you pretty much just have Miami and everybody else. I mean, I know Louisville's undefeated, but they haven't had a statement game quite like Miami has, but maybe Miami's statement win over Florida is just gonna, as the weeks go on, is just not gonna be as impressive with the
Yeah.
way Florida's gonna this season looks like it's gonna play out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up Cal too, because that does kind of give us a little bit of transition into this next topic. We brought this up before, but we kind of didn't dive into it a whole lot, and we won't go too deep into this because it's still like a lot of preliminary decisions being made here. But news emerged last week that uh, a bunch of teams are going to join what is going to be the Pac-12 again. So we've got Washington State and Oregon State, obviously, who have been left out on their own. We had the story, what was it, a week and a half ago, where they announced that they weren't continuing their scheduling agreement with the Mountain West. So that told you, well,
Either something was going one way or the other, something
yeah,
was gonna happen. Yeah.
yeah. So then what happens is obviously, even though it's just two schools, they still do have a pretty deep, well of resources. I mean, they've made a lot of money. They're going to probably make more money off of this lawsuit from the other schools that up and left them. They still got residual money from championship games that have happened in the past, and the media deal after it, was dissolved or whatever. They've got the Pac-12, studio facilities still that they can do whatever they want with. Obviously it's just dormant now, but it's a resource. And obviously the name. I mean, the conference has been around forever. I mean, people know it. People know the Pac-12, and it sounds, as dumb as it is, whoever's in it, it's always going to sound more impressive than the Mountain West to most people. So yeah, it's the, I guess, brand washing that we buy into sometimes as people. Yeah. So anyways, Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and San Diego State have all announced that they are leaving the Mountain West to
It's a
join.
lot of states.
Yeah, a lot of states. Yeah, yeah, it's all states. They're all states. They should be the all-state conference instead of the
Yeah,
Big
there
12.
you go. You got your sponsorships built in there.
There you
It's
go.
all state stunts.
Man, they got to be on that already. I bet.
I wonder what happened to that guy, but go ahead. That's the getting homers to get for the what then was the Cleveland Indians, and now the next he's selling insurance. Who knows what he's up to these days?
Yeah. So yeah, interesting, obviously. And I heard some guys talking about this because they brought up the fact that obviously Stanford and Cal are in such a bizarro situation right now. They wanted to latch on to whatever they could that was going to
Well,
be.
you can't really blame them either.
No.
It's like, what choice did you have? I mean, got to do something.
Mm-hmm. So they talked about the possibility of like, well, so what if this does come together, and maybe they get a couple more teams, or maybe something happens with the ACC, like we've kind of had the inkling that maybe that's going to blow up at some point. Would they consider coming back and joining that league again? Now, the thought from the guys that I was listening to was kind of like, nah, they're a little too snooty for that. Is kind of what it is. I mean, they think highly of themselves, and rightfully so. I mean, when you do look at it, obviously we're all focused on football, and that's what everybody loves the most. But Stanford is like a super talented athletic program. Like they're good at everything. Like
honestly, football's probably like the bottom of the barrel for them.
Yeah.
Like the Olympic sports is kind of where everything else there. I guess basketball, at least on the men's side, hasn't been so good in recent years. But everything else beyond that, I mean, you talk about swimming, golf, tennis, anything, volleyball.
Soccer,
they're pretty much good at everything. Baseball, even like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're top 5-10 program in a lot of sports, and they actually rattled off during when I was listening, like the fall sports, like they've got like 4 top 10 ranked teams right now in the different fall sports. So,
Well, I think they're one of the schools that were kind of hit hard when during the COVID-19 pandemic stuff, where having to cut programs and stuff because they had like 40 some athletic programs just because they basically had everything.
Yeah.
Because they could afford to do so with the the tuition money coming in and all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of the decision too, is because they're one of those places that doesn't give a rip about the travel thing. Like they'll go anywhere. They don't care. They got the money. They
got boats. They got yachts, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably got cyber trucks. Hyperloop is that what it's called? They got all that Silicon Valley stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. They're gonna solve the world's transportation issues just to get their field hockey team across the country.
There you go.
To play,
Whatever it takes.
It's so interesting. I mean, obviously there's more to come with this. This won't be the last of the Pac-12 schools, I'm sure. And one team that they brought up too that I do think is going to be one that will probably end up in this scenario. And the issue, I guess, is with 2 schools being in the same state kind of thing. The whole politics behind that. But UNLV, I mean, it's just logical that they would be part of it because where they are, you have access to a stadium to play a championship game, that kind of thing. But they're kind of hip tied to Nevada, so if they do, they'd both have to go, kind of thing. Which whatever. I mean, I'd probably go for that if I was.
I mean, they're at a number right now where you could probably stand to add 4 or 5 schools because what are they sitting at, like 7 or 8 now? I guess because they added 6, right? Or is it 5? Either way, they're at a position where they can definitely still add some room to add teams. And I sort of thought maybe not even like it's not going to bring home, bring in any big TV market or anything, but like a Wyoming school who's been okay, and in sports across the board, like a wrestling program's pretty good, basketball, football teams usually pretty decent as far as that goes. But yeah, when you talk about UNLV, just having Vegas as your home base, and I mean, it's kind of hard to say no to that if it's a contractually it's a possibility. And the last couple of years, their football team's been winning some kind of games like in big moments, I guess if you
Hmm.
call it that. So that doesn't do anything. I mean, even just over the weekend, was it the Friday night game? They
Yeah,
knocked
knocked
off
off Kansas.
Kansas.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
uh, at a soccer stadium, no less, but they still got the win. But but yeah, that was it's kind of hard to be like, nah, we don't want to be in Vegas. We don't want to do business there because I mean, they isn't that where they had the little cocktail hour, anyways? Was in
Yeah,
Vegas.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so
Yeah,
they obviously like they have who doesn't like Vegas
exactly. Yeah.
at least for a couple days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You might want to live there, but you go experience it once in a while. So, yeah, obviously a developing story. We'll see much more, I think, from that side of the country, and then of course the ACC thing's still going to come to some sort of head at some point, I believe, just because of the way that that's gone so far. But obviously, teams like Florida State not doing themselves any favors as far as on the field production to make anything like that happen. But we'll see down the road where it goes. Coming up this next week, we do have some pretty interesting matchups. I noted at least three that I'm really looking forward to watching. Because there are some good ones on the slate here for this next what we calling this week 4. Yeah, week
Yeah,
4.
we'll go with that. Sure.
Yeah. So, uh, um, well, I mean, starting with obviously your squad pulled a nice win there over Northern Iowa this past weekend, who usually gives teams fits, and Nebraska did a pretty good job of kind of just holding them in check. And now, who would have thought Nebraska Illinois on a Friday night would be a ranked matchup? Two
Yeah,
teams just
I
don't play.
thought. I mean, I was assuming a tough game, definitely, just because the way they usually play. But both teams being ranked is probably a little bit of a surprise, and it's a different deal. I'll be having a Friday night game at home.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of schools have done that in the past. Certain schools are, maybe kind of against it. I actually kind of like it. Might even end up trying to make a, make it happen. Get up there and check them out on a Friday night. Actually, works better for me than a Saturday
Yeah.
with other, games going on with kids and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
might end up. But yeah, it should be a pretty good matchup. I don't want to. I'm not trying to say like Nebraska's looks so amazing and unstoppable or anything like that, but I'm a little surprised to see Illinois ranked. I think it's by the strength of that Kansas win, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
when they were ranked. But we'll see. What we talked about. Bielema, he'll have a game plan. He'll have something he's going to hang his hat on. So definitely will have to be ready to play and kind of be on top of everything. But I think the atmosphere and the environment should be pretty good, especially being kind of a unique Friday night home game.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely an interesting early season matchup. And two teams I think so far that have played some pretty interesting close type games. So will be one to keep an eye on. The other thing, or the other few that I had listed here on my slate, one of them is this. To me, this may very well determine if one of these teams is in the Big 12 championship game. Because Utah is on the road to take on Oklahoma State this week, and both have looked like pretty good teams. I don't know what the Cam Rising situation is, whether or not he has a chance to be back for this one. I certainly hope so, because I want to see that when those guys matching up. But boy, this last week, Okie State, they look solid. I mean, they've got some weapons. I mean, I obviously talked up Ollie Gordon, all off season, and I still think he's a terrific player. But teams have game planned to stop him, and they've done a pretty decent job of that so far. But they've got a number of receivers that are experienced and pretty good, and they had another new one that's kind of a bigger guy that was out there catching balls that I noticed this past weekend too. So they've got an interesting pass game. Defense needs a lot of work. They give up a lot of yards. They give up a lot of points sometimes, but that's going to be a fun one because Utah obviously just a hard-nosed team. They do a lot of things right. Kind of grind you down type of squad, always have been. That's going to be a fun game to watch, I think.
Yeah, one of I guess a couple of the ones I was looking at, and these are maybe more of a kind of, put the nail in the coffin a little early, or maybe it's, they've shown us what they are type of games. And the first one would be that USC and Michigan matchup. Of course, Michigan, uh, I guess, rebounded. I mean, they won this week, but after that, kind of took a whooping against Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it could be some of the same here this week. And if that's the case, I don't think anybody is expecting them to make a run after that game, but it could go off the rails like real quick if it's another bloodbath or a big type of loss, a 20-point loss or something like that. Kind of along those lines too. I guess you might like this one, you might not go in the ACC with Cal and Florida State. So the Cal is the king of
Ooh.
the ACC. This they could definitely. I mean, this I don't think it's gonna considering how far they went last year. I don't think it could signal a coaching change, but it's going to be real bad to be a 0-4
Yeah.
start. I don't that anybody I don't care, and they didn't. If he won the title, I'd say he's safe. But the fact that they didn't, I mean, it wasn't obviously any of his doing. Anybody loses their starting quarterback at that time of the year,
Yeah.
probably not going to make it either. But that was the situation, the way it played out, and then just last one. This is like kind of the same thing. Just like this might call this the freaking toilet bowl here. The two teams you mentioned earlier, Florida and Mississippi State. I'm not going to be watching this, but I'll look at the results, and that might be that actually might be the nail in the coffin there for that game.
Yeah. Yeah. That's gonna be that'll be
If you
ugly.
lose to a team that's coming off a loss to Toledo by what 20, 26, 24 point loss, and then you go and lose to them, yeah,
Yeah.
you're pretty much done,
That
bro.
would be it. Yeah. Yeah. That's rough.
So it's kind of more
Well.
like a car wreck. Like can't look away this week. I
Yeah.
guess that's more, at least far as just casual watching. That's what I'm looking for.
Hmm.
Now the picks might be a different story. We'll get into that here later in the week with our usual video
Hmm.
post. But as far as just what kind of catches our eye early, I'm looking for those train wrecks. I guess that's going to be that's where my mind's at right now.
Yeah. Well, and isn't I think that's interesting too. That there, it seems like I railed on the ACC, but it does seem like the bottom of the barrel in the SEC ain't so great either. It's been rough for some of those teams.
Yeah, you get past about the top 4 or 5 or so, and I guess it's more than that now. You added Texas and Oklahoma, so of course you're going to increase your depth, right? But without those two, I mean, you freaking go down. Okay, let's say if we take those two teams out, you go past. I mean, shoot, even the top 4 or 5, you're getting pretty slim there. Because I mean, LSU and A&M, they're ranked, but are we that confident
Yeah.
how good
Yeah.
of teams those two
Hmm.
are? I mean,
Yeah.
I think Missouri's pretty solid, but then after last week, they have some questions. Tennessee's probably looked in Alabama, probably from top to bottom for your traditional SEC teams.
Hmm.
Of course, Georgia too, but other than
Yeah.
that, I mean, that's kind of the three there, and then it gets real thin with the teams we mentioned. And then you talk about Auburn, who's already lost, and Arkansas's got a loss on the board. So
Yeah.
in South Carolina, they could have had a big win last week, but kind of let it slip through their hands too.
Yeah, that was an intriguing game too. Kind of weird how that one went back and forth, and LSU just squeaks one
Well,
away.
I mean, honestly, I'm just with so many games going on at that time. I was like, oh crap, they're done for. I thought kind of I was like, I
Hmm.
don't know if they're gonna make a run here. The next thing I look up, they're interviewing Brian Kelly. So I was like, shit, they must have won. Like LSU must have won. And I like the score like they did. I was like, how the
Yeah.
hell did they win? So I went back and found out. But I was like, I buried them. I was like, ah shit, they didn't look
Hmm.
very good, and I thought they were gonna go down. There he is, old Southern Brian Kelly, yawling and fixing to.
He's ready to go for his 360 camera shoot after the big
Oh
win.
yeah.
Uh,
Dude, every time I watch it, I'm like, I can't look. Talking about train wrecks, that's so awkward and embarrassing and funny at the same time.
oh, it's great. It's great for us, that's for sure. One other game I did want to point out for next week. There is an interesting one in the SEC. I think Tennessee is at
Oh
Oklahoma.
yeah,
That'll be
yeah.
fun. Can Tennessee score 70 on Oklahoma? They've scored 70 on everybody else.
I mean, Oklahoma might have 60. It could be one of those
Yeah.
games. Like, I mean, I would obviously favor Tennessee just because they've looked from top from. I mean, I know they haven't played that great of
Yeah.
teams,
Yeah.
but I mean, they've beaten the
Beating the
crap out of
snot out
everybody
of them.
they've
Yeah.
played. So
Hmm.
you can't really say anything about that. Oklahoma's had a little up and down here in a couple of these games. So um, I guess that would be, looking at it early, that'd be the favorite. But
Yeah.
that should be definitely a good one. I think.
Yeah.
I don't see how they can score as much as they've been scoring. But how do you? I mean, with team averaging that many points, you got to hope 35 or less, and you're probably sitting pretty good, 30 or less.
Hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. That line is going to be interesting to see. What's the over under on that? Because obviously Oklahoma is traditionally a team that puts up points. They're not
right.
known for shutting you, not known for just being a defensive team. And Tennessee, obviously, very much that way this year.
You, you
That's
might
going
be
to be
looking
fun.
about 60, 65, 70,
Yeah,
something like that.
you might be. Yeah, yeah. That's going to be wild. So those are some of the games we're kind of peeking at here as we move forward in this next week. Obviously, like SJ said, we will get you the video coming out later this week with our official picks. So we'll be all over that for you. And we want to make sure that you are interacting with us as well. So if you have, some games that you're looking at, some picks that you really like, we'd love to hear from you. At Cherokee CP, at SJM Bets, those are our handles there on Twitter. So you can hit us up in that location. Obviously, we'd love if you follow the podcast. If you're listening, obviously you do a little bit, but if you would like and share with some folks, we'd appreciate that. Available everywhere you can possibly find it, pretty much. And then, of course, log on and subscribe, like, and share the YouTube channel as well. It's the same name at Everyday We're Covering. You can look it up and be able to follow and get those updates so that when we send our picks out, you can kind of get a little bit from us. So, it gives you a little bit more than just us. Obviously, we put out the graphic for you too, but, we give a little bit of insight on what we're thinking and why we're going to lean that way for the weekend. So then you can go back and tell us why we're very smart or why we're a bunch of idiots. That's half the fun of it too.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you agree with us beforehand, you can't disagree with us after the fact. Like, no, once you pick a side, you got. This isn't like the other stuff where you do it in every 4 years. You gotta stick to your guns here, and you can't be waffling and flipping back and forth.
Yeah. No late changes on the betting app when you're in there. I appreciate that. Ride with us or don't. One of the way. Of course, you can fade us too and just tell us that. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
You, but
yeah.
When we win, we're gonna let you know too. So
exactly.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, that's why I owned up to it at the beginning. Wasn't a great week, but we're going to get better. And we've done well up to this point, so can't be too upset. You're going to have a not-so-fantastic week here and there. SJ2, before we wrap it all up, I wanted to give you an opportunity, too, to talk about the fights because it was kind of a built-up event for the UFC this past weekend and had some good stuff on there.
Yeah, as far as the event goes, it seemed like a pretty cool deal, I guess, that the Sphere, whatever, I don't even know what you call it, the arena event, space, whatever. But I mean, to me, like, I don't want, I could talk about this for a while, but to me, I'd much rather just let's pay the fighters a little better and do things like that rather than pay whatever
company
20, 30, 40, whatever millions it was to put a couple cool graphics up. Because I'm not even doubting. I bet if you're there, it's freaking amazing. It's kind of like, I mean, this was first, but I don't know if you've seen, like, I think it's in the Dallas area, I believe. They have kind of a similar, it's almost like a wraparound screen, but then they'll show football games there and they have fights now too. But it literally does look like you're like sitting like at field level and it kind of wraps around you. I'm guessing those tickets are outrageous as well. And that was another thing. I mean, they cost like, I think nosebleeds were like thousands, for this type of event. It's a smaller arena, but I mean, whatever. I'm sure it looked cool in person. On TV, I'm like, it's interesting. Just I don't know. I'm more worried like how about let's book some better fights and stuff. But and then the picks didn't go that great just because I mean I went a little bit more prop heavy this time. I got most of the guys that I picked still won, or at least the first two. The other guy lost a split decision. Ended up going like 2-4, not great. But my heavy bets I did win. One of those was Diego Lopez. I went the over 1.5 rounds, and also for him to win. So that kind of juiced it up, kind of similar to you were doing with that. With this, just give you a little bit more plus money on that, squeezing something prop else in there, and then in the main event, Marab kind of, I guess he was the underdog, which I was shocked at. I mean, as much of an underdog as he was, of course, defending champions usually going to be the favorite, but he ended up pulling off the decision win, which wasn't. I really wanted to go that way, but I was like, yeah, I could see him like. Because he's just heavy wrestling, the other dude's straight up striker. So I was like, if he gets him down, I could see maybe some type of a choke coming in, or just a TKO, or just kind of mauls him into submission, if you will. So I was like, I don't want to go a decision and then him get damn stoppage and I'd be pissed off, because that's like one of those things like you got the right guy, just not the right right finish, right winning method. So I was like, I'm just gonna go with him on the win. So I did that. So we got those, and then even boxing, I actually did a little bit better. I went 3-1 with that Canelo Alvarez card. I picked him by decisions. I ended up getting the decision win. Caleb Plant, another fight on that card. I picked a prop for him to win between 7 and 12 rounds. He got the TKO in the 9th, so we were good there. And then had an over on the first prelim fight, over 8.5 rounds. Hit that. The only one we missed was one of the fights to go the distance. Dude quit on the stool in the ninth, so uh, that was kind of that was a little bit because I was like, bro, you got a couple more rounds, just get through it, But so overall, did pretty good. I guess he combined the fights, did a pretty good night there, and there were some good entertaining fights. The reason the UFC kind of did that went all out is they're trying to in historically, and shoot, it's been like this for 25, 30 years, like that weekend, and then a Cinco de Mayo. So Cinco de Mayo, Mexican Independence weekend, is always like the big huge marquee fight weekend, and boxing's kind of own that. And so there's friggin' Dana White doofus thinks he's gonna overtake this day. And I mean, you would have been a lot better just I mean, he wanted to kind of play into the date,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as like the depth of their roster, they don't have like either the Mexican American or the Mexican born fighters that like boxing does.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard to plan an event like that and try to build around that when you don't, because the boxing card didn't have all fighters that have a either like either certain ethnicity or from that country.
Mm-hmm.
But at the main card, at the top of the bill, that's who was there, Canelo. So I guess you don't have to go all out, and they tried to do it, I think, a little too much, and their roster's just not as deep, like I said. So it wasn't like a great matchup or a big name because it's still a younger sport, and you really need like a. I mean, I didn't care for the guy, but you do need like a John Jones, a Conor McGregor, just to bring in like a huge audience for MMA still. Like
Mm-hmm.
boxing has about 10, 12 guys that can really fill up a arena like for a big weekend and have a big pay-per-view fight. Obviously, there's more weight classes too, and then
Yeah.
there's women fighters you can throw in there too that have bigger followings or big names. Not saying there's not UFC fighters, but they're so controlled by that league that it does lose something for the individual athlete, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. Boxing just has a little bit more of a, I guess, you more of your own individual than you are if you're in the UFC. But either way, pretty good weekend. We're on the winning side of that. Kind of like you said earlier, bailed us out on that football crap. But we'll bounce back this week. It's nice when you have those good matchups because then you're like, well, a little bit of history more with these teams than somebody getting their friggin' crap kicked out of them by Toledo and didn't see that one coming. But
Yeah.
who did? Who would have? Like,
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So
I mean,
yeah.
no offense to Toledo, but come on.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, interesting. Yeah, I guess interesting how that whole situation played out too. It'll be something to keep an eye on, I guess, moving forward in that realm. Interesting event as well too, I suppose, was
I
trying
think
to
it
do
was
it that
cool.
way.
It just I don't know. It just seemed like there's basically like everyone was just like losing losing it over like, oh my god, there's like a
Mhm.
video. It's like so basically like you're having fights at an IMAX theater.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like because I know it's like more than that when you're there, but I'm like I don't. I, if you're there to watch the fights, I think you wanted to see like a good fight. If I wanted to
Hmm.
like go to see something like that, I go to whatever an experience, whatever you call them, like you
Yeah.
go to like a theater or something like that. But I don't know. I think if you just make good fights, I think it'd be a little better. Like I don't know how they do that stuff though. Some of that, as far as like the people that run that facility, like the ability they have to do that stuff is pretty crazy. But I'm just like, you
Oh
got all
yeah.
these damn drunk fight fans there, and you're like putting them in this like where I don't know if you've ever been to like Disney, but that it's like that. It looks like that damn soaring ride
Oh
where it
yeah.
feels like you're moving, but you're like
Uh
really not.
huh.
I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea with
Yeah.
all these
Probably not.
freaking yeah. They're gonna be puking on each other, just freaking passing out, fighting. I guess that's normal. Never mind. That's
Yeah.
just the usual fight night.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't think that that's the kind of venue like, or the kind of event that they would want, as far as like taking care of this great, beautiful new place we've got. Like, oh, let's bring in a bunch of drunks that want to fight each other. Like, it's probably not a good idea.
I
But
mean, when it's a place that I guess I don't think they're a cover. What are they, like a tribute band? They term it as, but when they have a Grateful Dead tribute band as like one of their resident,
mhm.
shows, kind of shows you that maybe the kind of trippy atmosphere you may be in. I mean, I don't think most of those people are sober at those type of shows. So
No, that's true. Very true. Uh, so that's some fun stuff. Obviously, great games like we said coming up here this weekend. There was a few fun NFL games this weekend. Obviously, as we move forward, we'll get more into that too. We'll probably dive in some picks along the way on that front. So that'll be fun. It's already been a kind of a wacky back and forth. Some of the big dogs have already gone down here at least once, maybe even twice so far in this young NFL season. So we'll play those. and yeah, have some fun with it as we move forward. So make sure, again, you're following us on the different platforms for the pod, and then of course follow that YouTube channel so you can look out for our picks later on here this week. We thank you for joining us. Feel free to shout us out, let us know what you're drinking, betting, whatever, and we'll include you here on the show as well. That's SG Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.